Odd time signatures are always a gem that music enthusiasts are happy to find, especially in places where we don't expect them. Most popular music you hear nowadays tends to be written in 4/4 or 3/4, or one of their triplet variants, 6/8, 9/8, 12/8, etc. And while there's nothing wrong with these time signatures, it makes the non-standard ones that much more noticeable and enticing to the trained ear, especially if it's done well. Of course, for composers who write background music, odd time signatures are just a part of the job, and while the average person might not be aware of it, they've probably heard hundreds of music tracks in odd time signatures across every movie or series they've watched. But since all of this music is meant to build an atmosphere and support what's on screen, we often don't even notice it, or at the very least, we aren't counting out how many beats are in each measure. And when you have an entire industry of composers that work in background music and pop music, well, you're bound to get some experimental songs from time to time. So let's have a look and listen to how a handful of Japanese composers have written songs that you'll never be able to tap your foot to the same way again. Starting on the simpler side of things, we have Akame ga Kill's second opening track, Liar Mask, composed by Otsuka Goki and Tomo, with a period. The track begins simply enough, starting with a fairly quick 4/4 rhythm while Maya Marika sings a simple quarter note melody. Following a fermata at the end of the introductory chorus, the tempo kicks it up a notch but keeps to the same 4/4 meter grouping. The vocal line becomes a bit more complex in its rhythms, hinting at the meter change we'll come across later. This rhythm emphasizes the first and third beats, with most of the syllables falling on one of these while she occasionally leads into them with an offbeat descent. Contrary to the backing rhythms coming from the band instruments, the vocal line's offbeats are actually in triplets instead of pairs, which gives the music a sort of swingy feel. This swing feeling is important in lessening the impact from the sudden shift in both timbral and metric sounds as we move into the 3/4 pre-chorus. As you can hear, this 3/4 section sounds completely different from the 4/4 sections surrounding it. The instrumentation and accompanying harmonies give the music a sort of dizzying, carnival-esque quality, matching the lyrics describing how the tragic play will repeat. She also mentions a face hidden behind an ominous smile, yet another reference to the drama metaphor in the form of a mask. As she states that she will draw her sword to make sure nothing more is lost, the band section swells back in so that we can return to 4/4 and enter the chorus. What's so interesting in this 3/4 section is the way the style of music changes to match the actual lyrics themselves. I've only seen one Japanese play in person, and all my other knowledge comes from how anime portrays it, but the dramatic nature of these lines makes them feel like lines out of a play more than song lyrics. The sudden odd waltz reflects these dramatic words while also following them nicely into the chorus, where the more edgy, angst-infused lyrics can readopt its rock opera stylization. It might not be the most complex change, but it's appropriate and fitting for a song that honestly reads a lot like angsty lyrics of an edgy teenager's private song. Here we have the opening for the first season of Hon's Hiki no Gekkokujo, Ascendance of a Bookworm, and honestly the most metrically complex section of this whole track is the very beginning with the piano solo. We start off with a few simple chords in the right hand, playing a consistent pulse that immediately makes us assume a fairly slow and straightforward pulse in 4/4. This first measure of 4 follows with a confusing secondary pulse playing in groups of 5 for every 2 higher ticks. This unfolds a bit more until the first verse begins, where we realize that the opening pulse was all a lie and that we had actually been in 5/8 the whole time, with the higher pulse being in a lesser but still confusing pulse of 2.5/8 beats over the regular 5. 5/8 and 7/8 are compound time signatures, which are pretty tricky to write in because if the piece isn't composed well enough to support the rhythm, it'll sound like it's sort of tripping over itself because the beat is coming in slightly too early. You'll know it's well written if you can listen to the track without immediately noticing something sounds slightly off from the norm, and admittedly, it's quite obvious in this track. However, in the context of what the song was made for, this musical tripping is actually relevant to the show, though I have no idea if this was an intentional decision made by composer Shirato Yusuke. The main character, Mine, is a sickly young girl whose body was taken over by an isekai Japanese woman after both of them died. Despite having the soul and mind of a modern-day woman, she still possesses the body of a girl too sickly and frail to even walk to the market with her mother. As you can see and hear, the stumbling 5/8 pattern's significance lies in the fact that Mine is too weak to do much on her own, yet her adult mind craves the comfort of books, something a commoner like herself would never have the luxury of possessing, let alone understand in this new world. Despite this, the song's lyrics and melody, sung by Moroboshi Sumide, are filled with hope that somehow Mine will be able to make her dreams come true in this new world, and the 5/8 melody gets interspersed with smoother sections of 6/8. These more standard sections show how she is making progress while still showing that the task of reaching her goals is not without troubles, again referenced by the switches back into 5/8. By constantly switching between these two meters, the 5/8 sections always have a stumbling feeling, yet because of the rising hopefulness in every other aspect, we feel that everything will turn out alright, as reinforced by the occasional steady 6/8 sections. While Liar Mask had a clever way of tying the rhythm to the song's lyrics, Masshiro is much more creative in how it ties the song to the show without being so out there that the song can't be listened to on its own. Holy crap, there are so many aspects of this song to talk about that I'm glad this video is strictly about the metric modulation. The song opens as a basic slow 4/4 ballad, with Moriyama Naotaro singing out simple lyrics to match the slow tempo. As he wonders what the fuzzy feeling in his chest is, the strings fill out the harmony with some warm, lush chords. The lyrics can be seen both from Somali's perspective as the lone human girl ignorant of the world around her, and from the golems, with the strings touching on their relationship as daughter and surrogate father. Following a sweeping cadence on the strings, the music suddenly picks up in tempo and plucks away in 6/8, threatening to leave us behind if we aren't quick enough to adapt. This is accompanied by somewhat random lyrics, first comparing the fuzzy feeling to pressing one's face into a freshly washed towel, and then immediately mentioning how a baby bird is chirping out a morning melody. The instrumentation and musical ornamentations are very childlike and convey a lack of focus akin to how Somali is always quick to run off and do things because she's a rambunctious child excited about experiencing the world. While the tempo doesn't actually slow down on the final phrase about the morning melody, the musical ensemble suddenly shifts back into the more ballad-esque style it was in before, removing the sense of childlike wonder. As a pickup leading into the next section, a transitional bar of 9/8 gets added in on do ko ma, with the word's final syllable de landing on the downbeat of our new 4/4 marching section to match the lyrics, no matter where we walk, the path will continue on. Notably, this 4/4 section technically isn't any faster than the 6/8 and 9/8 section that preceded it, as the 8th notes are still at the same value. Rather, this now feels quicker because the beats are being divided into every 2/8 beats rather than every 3, not to mention the snare drum and piano pushing us along at a march. The rest of the song continues in 4/4 from here, though the tempo, rhythms, harmony, and melody change constantly, which gives the song a journey-like feel to mirror the journey Somali and the golem are are on to find other humans. Much like Liar Mask, Arigatou wa koっちの言葉focuses its meter changes to match the lyrics, unlike how Masshiro and the next track use them to create an atmosphere that mirrors the show they were made for. Unlike Liar Mask, however, this song's style of music is much more reflective of the show, whereas Liar Mask's 3/4 section did not match Akame ga Kill's atmosphere the way the 4/4 sections did, and thus it manages to paint a picture of the show in a different way. This song works similarly to how a parent in Young Child's Day might, with a slow waking start followed by a slightly rushing rhythm that throws the opening out of sync before things can march along steadily. This analogy works even better when you hear how the track continues on from here, but I'll save that for a full analysis of the song in the future. And finally, a video on odd time signatures in anime openings just wouldn't be complete without a Maeda June track, and you know we had to save the best for last. I've actually talked about Toki Kizamu Uta's time signature changes a little bit before, but this time we're going to go a little more in depth and see if we can figure out why Maeda made the decisions he did. The song opens with an intricate piano line, playing out an extended 3-3-2 8th note pattern to give us 3-3-3-3-2-2 over 2 bars. This itself doesn't indicate much aside from the fact that the listener might be able to infer that the rhythms of this song won't be quite as straightforward as your average J-pop song. And then suddenly the meter changes with the first verse, coming in with a single bar of 3-4 followed by 2 bars of 5-4, then another 3-4, then another 5-4 before finally landing on 2 more bars of 3-4 to close out the phrase, leading into a section of only 3-4. Taking a look at where the melody and phrases fall, this produces musical phrases that are 13 beats long, which, if you weren't already aware, isn't exactly the most intuitive number to count to in music. Here we have Leah singing about how she, or rather Tomoya, spent so much time watching the beads in an hourglass trickle down, restarting it when it reached the end and wondering when time will truly advance. I won't get into the metaphorical breakdowns in this video, but if you've seen Clannad or read the visual novel, you know. This first verse section is actually omitted from the anime opening version, but it felt weird to leave out from the analysis. Coming out of the 3-4 section, there's 1 bar of 5-4 before we repeat the pattern from before. This time the lyrics recounting how there are so many sunny spots on the hill where you, referring to Nagisa, were the only person. These back and forth 3 and 5 sections can be seen to represent a shortening and lengthening of the passage at irregular intervals, sort of how Tomoya's life takes a turn following his graduation leading into the After Story arc. From a more musical perspective, Maeda almost seems to have composed the music to fit the lyrics he wrote as opposed to creating them concurrently. This allows them to flow more organically than fitting them into a single time signature, as we can hear a little bit during the 3-4 sections. Following a build-up in the second 3-4 section, the chorus comes bursting in 4-4, suddenly taking advantage of a new time signature for a much more expressive lyrical performance. If the sections of 3 and 5 represent the period immediately after graduation, and the strict 3-4 sections represent Tomoya's spiraling regret, then the 4-4 sections are an expression of why he feels such regret, both recounting the good things that have disappeared as well as the hardships he faces currently. The straight metering feels like a callback to when times were more straightforward, even if they didn't feel like it at the time, while the expressive lyricism is both a longing and cursing of those simpler times. Coming out of the chorus, we get a bridge-like post-chorus in the unusual time signature of 5-8, ornamented with a single bar of 6-8 in the middle to suspend the music for a brief moment and allow both Leah and the listeners to catch our breath. Unlike how Masshiro utilized 5/8 to represent a stumbling pattern, this post-chorus is represented as a rapid-fire onslaught of single syllables, which makes the group of 5 notes feel like a single measure each, rather than a split grouping of 3 and 2. This gives them a rhythmic chanting feeling, like some kind of spell or sutra is being recited, sort of mirroring the way the subtle magic of Clannad's world works through the use of wishes and lights. Toki Kizamu Uta is the only pop song I can think of that mixes common and odd simple and compound meters, making it one of the most unique tracks in the world of not just J-pop, but all popular music. These kinds of things aren't exactly new in the musical world, but it's the manner in which it's also so accessible to non-musically trained ears that makes it such a fascinating piece of work, as it lacks the pretentiousness of a higher form of music all the way down to its title, which translates to a song to pass the time. Metering isn't something that gets explored much in lyrical music, especially not in something as common as most anime song genres tend to be. But while these are the only ones I'm consciously aware of, they stick out in my mind precisely because they stray from the norm. And while they'd probably be just as memorable in a single simple meter with top quality writing and mixing, these metric modulations allow them to reach these same heights regardless of the other aspects. Anyway, what did you guys think of these Annie songs with odd time signatures and metric modulations? If you know of any others, please let me know down in the comments below, because I would love to listen to them and dig into how they're used and for what purpose. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, support me over on Patreon, and follow my other social media accounts. Thanks as always for watching, and I will see you in the next one.